together. Indian political leadership has been in crisis for many years. There's been a lot of talk recently about the upcoming 2014 elections, about who will lead India, about the debate, more or less conventional, between whether it will be a Rahul Gandhi or Narendra Modi race, or whether the leaders from the states will emerge somehow at a higher level than they have ever been. Now, the Indian leadership question is pretty significant when you go back to the past. What lessons can the past, especially the leaders from the independence movement, what lessons from the past can we take to understand how we've come to be in the present? And what can the present tell us that we're not learning at all? Who better than to speak about this to us than Ramachandra Guha, noted eminent historian, the author of many books. One book I have here today with me is The Makers of Modern India. This is one of the books in which Ram Guha has written about and quoted extensively from the works of 19 leaders of this country, especially those and exclusively those who did a lot of writing about their thoughts and engagement with India.
I would like to start with the current crop of leadership, because there's such a lot of talk around them. And we've read about the people whom you've considered makers of modern India. I just wanted to ask you, do you see any national or even regional political figure today who might in the long term wield the kind of influence that a Nehru or a Gandhi did?
No, and we shouldn't expect it. I think, as I say in the introduction to this book, that it's at the founding of a nation that you have these extraordinary visionaries, whether it be Jefferson and Washington for America, or if there's a crisis, for example, Churchill at a time when Britain was besieged. So it's rare to have a continuous sequence of great leaders. I think India was fortunate that Gandhi, Nehru, Ambedkar and some others were all born around the same time. So what we should be looking for is not visionary, heroic leaders, but capable and focused leaders. I think firstly we should set our bar slightly lower. Maybe we're not even meeting that, but certainly it's unwise and futile to hope for a new Gandhi, Nehru or Ambedkar.
But since you said crisis, would you take what the nation is going through now? There's all kinds of rent-seeking that's happening along with economic growth and all of that. And some scholars have said this is sort of the Gilded Age, or might be we'll actually come out of it. But would you take this as the kind of crisis that could throw up?
Well, it could. It's throwing up leaders. Whether they're the right kind of leaders is not sure. And the crisis is caused by a lack of leadership. So that's on the negative side. That's true. To elaborate on the point I just made, in India after Gandhi, which was published in 2007, I said a nation has to be founded by visionaries, but it can be led in mid-career by mediocrities. Alright. Now clearly Manmohan Singh is less than a mediocrity. I think Manmohan Singh will go down, in my view, as possibly the worst Prime Minister India has ever had. Because of the things he did not do, multiplied by the length of his tenure. It's not as if Chandrasekhar or Deve Gowda were distinguished Prime Ministers, but they were not there for very long. And it's precisely what Manmohan Singh did not do, that there was rent-seeking going on, he did not check it. There were urgent administrative reforms to be undertaken. When he came to power in 2004, we had 10 or 12 years of economic growth. So we had more money, but we had to find ways of using that money more wisely, more equitably. We had to find ways of reviewing our public institutions to cope with the growing demands that the population was imposing on them. And that's, in all those respects, he conspicuously failed. So these are 10 wasted years in terms of issues. And of course, he showed no leadership quality at all. He's never visible, he never addresses the people. A Prime Minister of India should go to the different states and meet them. So the point is that there's clearly a crisis. We've certainly had abysmally poor political leadership at the center for the last 10 years. But whether the alternatives that offer are going to redeem and rescue India, that's a different question. We can talk about that. But Manmohan Singh particularly, and perhaps even Rahul Gandhi, though Rahul Gandhi, it's not fair to target him because he hasn't taken an administrative role. But Manmohan Singh certainly has been less than mediocre. He's been a colossal disappointment. So there's been a massive failure of leadership that we can see.
So what do you make of the fact that he came in for the second term? So what does it say about leadership processes in the country, in the party, in for example the UPA, that knowing that he had one term, I mean, there wasn't an alternative Prime Minister for the second term at all?
Leadership is about character. Leadership is partly about context. Are there times such that you can have a profound and positive impact on society? And it's partly about character. So, can you, take clear, cogent action, take people along, and enact certain policies that will take the country onto a better path? And Manmohan Singh's weaknesses were visible in the first term, but they really, the consequences only emerged in the second term. The first term, his weaknesses were clear because he did not, even after becoming Prime Minister, he did not choose to seek a fresh mandate for the Lok Sabha, which all other previous Prime Ministers who had gotten in the Rajya Sabha had. Deve Gowda, Narasimha Rao, I.K. Gujral, Indira Gandhi, all started the Rajya, so he didn't do that. Then choice of ministers he left completely to Sonia Gandhi. So he had absolutely, Shivaraj Patil in home and Arjun Singh in education, just give two examples. Now Leela would have said, Madam, I will become Prime Minister and you don't want to bear the responsibility, but allow me to choose my team. I'll consult you, so you can have a right of veto, but it can't be the person you nominate. Especially in 6 months or a year, it will seem that these two conspicuous examples, also there may be others. So I think these are questions that historians will ask about Manmohan Singh. And of course, I'm sure we'll discuss this later, but to anticipate, I think a major reason why Narendra Modi is seen as a strong alternative, and people are willing to overlook, some people are willing to overlook his manifest, character flaws, is because Manmohan Singh was so shockingly inept and weak.
You've chosen specifically and deliberately for this book, you've actually chosen political writing as the basis of people whom you would consider makers of modern India. Why is this so important? Why is it so important?
It's important because these are all people who wrote their own speeches or wrote their own essays. They didn't have ghostwriters. Now, and the 19th century and the 20th century were the heyday of print. That's when it's selling books, magazines, newspapers that carried this. Now we are maybe moving, before the 19th century you were in an oral tradition. So great orators, the Romans were great orators because you didn't have print to communicate it. We may be again going into an oral tradition, and political oratory may become again more important than political writing because of the internet.
But do you even see that? If I take the three, if I take three cornerstones, writing, speech, and just doing on the ground. So how do you rate the present crop of leaders in each of these? Writing, of course.
Well, writing, no one can write remotely as intelligently or with a kind of analytical robustness in any language. This book has people who, it has writings translated from Tamil, from Hindi, from Marathi, from Bengali, right? And not just English, also English from Tamil, as I said. So I think clearly that kind of these are not people who can string together a coherent argument in writing. Some of them are good orators. Narendra Modi is certainly a very good orator. Whatever you may think of his politics, I obviously detest his politics, but he's a compelling and powerful orator. But the challenge now is not so much thought as really, as Subbu says, fixing these problems. We know what the problems are. We know that there is atrophy of institutions, there is massive corruption, there is inadequacy of infrastructure, there is no coherent foreign policy. We know what kind of issues that are there. You don't need, when for example India was born, there were real intellectual challenges. Should we be a Hindu state? Should we impose one language on the whole country? Should women have equal rights? All those battles have been won. So now you don't need that kind of visionary thinking. You need pragmatic politics, pragmatic focused politics. And that also seems to be missing.
If you take the doer angle of looking at Indian leadership, how would you compare Modi and Patel? Because there's this thing, recent controversy about people actually taking issue that Modi was comparing himself.
This question has to be answered at several levels. The first level, of course, is that Patel spent his whole life as a congressman. And it's only because the Congress has turned its back on Patel that Modi can claim. In fact, Patel's great achievement was building the Congress organization and creating this network of district and state units. So the Congress today is the only All India party. It's present in every state of the union, and the two people who are responsible for that are Patel and Kamraj. Patel in the 20s and 30s and 40s, and Kamraj in the 50s and 60s. They led the network which made the Congress a mass organization. And Rahul Gandhi is reaping the benefits of this. He hasn't created it, his mother did not create it, his father did not create it. But the Congress has given up on Patel. In fact, because the Congress disowned Patel, the BJP tried to claim him. And Narendra Modi then decided, since he's Gujarati, that, and a strong man, he claimed him. Now, when you think of Patel as a doer, Patel, as I said, built a party. He built the organizations of India's most important political party. That, of course, led the fight for freedom, but also basically managed the Indian state in the first 20 years after independence. But Patel himself was in government only for 2.5 years. Less than 2.5 years, 47 August, 3 years and a bit. He died in 1950 December. Now, so in those 3 years, he did a colossal amount. Again, it was questions of organization. So he brought the princely states on board. He did 3 things. Patel had 3 great achievements as Home Minister. One was to bring the princely states on board and persuade each one of them and work out specific deals with each prince so that to cajole him to join the Indian Union. The second thing he did was to transform the ICS into the IAS, to retain a kind of civil service but to modernize it, adapt it to Indian independent conditions. The third thing he did, which is not well recognized, is that he got the constitution passed in the Constituent Assembly, because he controlled the Congress party. So if Ambedkar or some other outsider had some suggestions and the Congress had reservations, it was Patel's job to persuade them. And he did all this very well. But there were certain things clearly, first of all, foreign policy, he had no interest. So, and we needed a Nehru there. In terms of assuring minorities equal rights, again we needed a Nehru. In terms of bringing the South on board, regions that did not speak Hindi, and especially women and youth, two enormously important parts of the Indian population to whom Patel did not appeal at all. So I think it was, and Patel himself recognized this, as I often argue, that Patel recognized he could not be Prime Minister. He was a nuts and bolts man. So, though he was a considerable figure, in terms of his contributions to even Indian nation making, he's second to Nehru. The historical record will tell you that.
But why did the Congress actually disown him?
Indira Gandhi was suspicious of him. Though her father was generally broad-minded about he recognized that you have differences but you still get along. Indira Gandhi grew up with this feeling that Patel is part of a faction, was part of a faction that was trying to undercut my father. So she had that prejudice. Then the emergency came and Patel's daughter Maniben actually was arrested in the emergency. So it became a family feud in the next generation, open. In the case of Vallabhbhai and Jawaharlal, there were disagreements, but they decided to submerge the disagreements and cooperate in the interest of the nation. Next generation, it became a slightly open feud. The generation after that, Rajiv Gandhi, of course, thought that his mother and Nehru were the greatest, and they died for no one else. And Sonia Gandhi continues that tradition. One of Sonia Gandhi's notable orientations is to attribute everything to Indira and Nehru and Rajiv. So Narasimha Rao was for example. You can't talk about credit for economic liberalization is given wrongly to Rajiv Gandhi. Now again, the food security bill will be unveiled, the ordinance will be unveiled on Rajiv Gandhi's birthday. So there is no place for anyone outside the family except Mahatma Gandhi, because Mahatma Gandhi is beyond everything, right? So it's not just Patel. Kamraj, Rajaji, Y.B. Chavan, Kamla Devi Chattopadhyay, so many famous congressmen and congresswomen who contributed enormously to the party and the nation are forgotten. So it's part, and so you deliver this to the BJP. So it's ironic that a lifelong congressman is claimed by the BJP as their kind of as their icon.
But coming back to the original question, do you think Modi will compare in the same way? Patel was to Congress.
I just go back to this book. This book has been controversial not for both for whom it's included and whom it's left out. So people have said why we left out Bose, why we left out Patel. But people have also asked why we've included M.S. Golwalkar. Now, I think M.S. Golwalkar was the maker of modern India because you could not have had the RSS and the BJP without him. People like Vajpayee and Advani and Murli Monroe Joshi were all nurtured by him. Hindu nationalism became an important political force in India largely because of M.S. Golwalkar. And he had original ideas about the role of religion, civilization and the nation. You may not agree with them, and I certainly don't agree with them. So Modi may be known as an enormously influential figure in Indian history. It's quite possible. My judgment is open on that. But it will be in the tradition of Golwalkar, which is sectarian, a kind of macho, masculine Hindutva that uses this intimidatory tactics, that hectors minorities, that is paranoid about an enemy's real and alleged. So, just as Golwalkar is in this book because of his great influence, which was negative, but it was colossal. You couldn't, and he had interesting ideas. In a subsequent book, 50 years later, may also have Modi, but not as an exemplar of what is good and noble and, in the spirit of Indian democracy, not like Gandhi or Nehru or Ambedkar or Tarabai Shinde, who was the pioneering feminist, none of that. It will be as someone who made India a less tolerant and more bigoted place. But that's, he may succeed because, as I said, he's a person of enormous strength of personality. He has charisma, individual charisma, and there's a sense of despair at what is shocking misgovernance of the Congress party. So he could have an impact. We don't know, but he's certainly not someone who a Democrat like me can admire.
Do you feel the need for a more visible exchange of debate and ideas between leaders? Do you think that would make a difference?
Absolutely. I think the decline of parliament and the decline of legislatures is very sad. In Nehru's day, right, I'd say from if you look at the Constituent Assembly debates of 46 till about 1975, they're very rich and very interesting, and all kinds of people, so communists, socialists, Jansanghis, congressmen, sometimes debates within the Congress. So there's a wonderful debate which I talk about in India after Gandhi, where N.V. Gadgil from Maharashtra is speaking on behalf of linguistic states, and Nehru is opposing him. Now, so of course, that's something that is quite sad, and I think what happens in Parliament now, and these endless walkouts, occasionally there's a debate, and there are some good speakers still, but they don't get a chance to really articulate their views. So
let me ask you this, on this thing about, it does interest intellectuals and it interests historians, scholars and all of that, that you need to have this actual deeper debate. But if you ask yourself from the common man's point of view, in terms of people who deal with administration every day, what does the deeper, richer debate that is supposed to happen between leaders in legislatures, what does that bring?
Debates make for more informed reasoning, more informed judgment, more appropriate policies, and it takes time, and there has to be give and take. Clearly, it's a question of things like employment, livelihood, education, health, security. Clearly, these are more immediate and urgent concerns, and reflective social or philosophical debates are not going to help you. They're a distraction. But as a society and a nation matures and on its journey, I think a culture of critical reflection and debate, both within the political class and outside, I think is important. And one of the things that's not happening is enough of a debate in the media. I more or less stopped coming on television for the reason that you have a Congress guy and a BJP guy shouting one another.
So much screaming.
But you could have had really interesting debate on many things. For example, you could have had FDI detail. You could have had economists going out the field, studying its impact, having a informed debate. So it's become just, and my fear is that the internet and Twitter intensify they increase the decibel volume without really contributing to thoughtful analysis.
Anything in your memory, recent memory, that you would call a powerful speech, deep speech made in Parliament or even in a state legislature that you would say is self-authored, therefore you would say original thinking, or even if not self-authored, you'd say, okay, there was original.
There's certainly good speakers you hear in the Lok Sabha. I don't, in Hindi and in English, I don't follow the legislative assembly debates. And you do have, I think Omar Abdullah's short speech about being a Muslim in India made an impact on me. That was, and I came from that, you could see that it was not rehearsed. Unlike Rahul Gandhi's speech in the same debate, which was rehearsed. So I think it's just that people are not given the opportunity. And I think this, this anti-defection law also is problematic because you can't go against your party. In that you can't even say my party is right here but it's wrong there. Right? So I think because then there are all these kind of party whips and so on. So there are problems with the way Parliament is run. But I'm sure that people do are good speakers. I met just one on one, I met quite a few MPs from different parties, and I'm sometimes quite impressed by how much they've read and how much they've,
But why isn't it really coming out, in the way? Do you think they are visible, like the oratory or the capability of reflection? Do you think it's adequately visible?
No, it's not. It's not. Certainly, it's not.
So what do you ascribe that to?
Well, it's hard to say. I think it's. A lot has to do with this conversion of political parties into family firms. It's across the board. It's not just the Congress party. So everywhere there's a certain family in control. So your entire dynamics is not coming up with creative, original ideas, but with pleasing the person who's close to you. So I think that it's a culture of deference, sycophancy built into most political parties now.
So how much of this culture of deference do you think? I'm just going to a social question here. This is not connected to leadership per se. People say this is a very hierarchical society. I also say that, steeped in caste, religion, all kinds of hierarchies. Now, politics is supposed to result in the breakdown of hierarchies as an organizing principle of political culture, social culture, whatever it is. Where do you think India's journey is in breaking up with old hierarchies?
No, it's happening, but it's happening slowly. And it can only happen slowly. Maybe it's happening too slowly. That's possible. But it can't happen overnight. You have 5,000 years of entrenched patriarchy, entrenched caste hierarchies, prejudices about our other communities. And we've only had 60 years of democracy. So, and some places happen faster. For example, in Kerala, where actually the prejudice and its untouchability was even more extreme than in North India. It's more or less broken down. So it is happening. Even with women, in my view as a sociologist, as a citizen, of course, it's extraordinarily worrying that you have, more visible attacks on women. But as a sociologist, these attacks are taking place because it's a counter-reaction by patriarchs who can't abide the fact that women are in the workplace, women are in, running banks, women are going to college. So it's actually a societal journey in which very deep-rooted hierarchies are being disturbed.
So the old is coming in conflict.
Yeah, so they are being disturbed, and it's creating all this tension and this conflict and this violence. And of course, again, leadership is important. Again, you need a religious leader like Gandhi who says, tear down the parda. There's a essay of in this volume. But the Puri of Sancharya who says women should not have to work. Right. So I think you have to find leaders who recognize that you have to adapt to the modern changing environment. So maybe a change is happening too slowly. And there's enormous variation across the states. I think that's something also one has to recognize. But change is happening. And what you're talking about is a very young political experiment. It's so revolutionary in a society as hierarchical as ours. It's so revolutionary to say everyone must be equal that it may take a few hundred years for some kind of equal citizenship to be created.
Since you actually brought up religious leaders, today's crop of religious leaders, do you feel they're outspoken enough about the social problems? You've got Sri Sri, who has a middle class, upper middle class following, Ravi Shankar. Then you have yoga type gurus, Hindu gurus and so on. You've got conventional leaders of the church hierarchies, not that outspoken about public life. Was it different when you're looking at the independence time and also the time for the first few decades after that? Were people from religion, leaders, people who see as leaders of religion, were they more outspoken then? Are they more outspoken now?
I think possibly they were more outspoken then. Now, when you talk about things like rent seeking, I think religious leaders across are more interested in controlling their property, controlling their flock, expanding their territory. They are not interpreting. Whereas what was happening at the time of the national movement, to 1880s to 1880, 1940, settling between Hinduism, Islam and Christianity, all three religions. The challenge was there. European colonialism, Indian nationalism, Gandhi, they all posed a challenge. And so you had leaders reflecting on how do we accommodate these modern aspirations. How do we like Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan, when he says, we're not going to look backwards, we're going to get education. We forget about the glory of the Mughals, we need to acquaint ourselves with modern scientific education. Right? Christian leaders, who started questioning caste hierarchies in the caste, or doing more work for women. So, and of course, Hindu leaders provoked by Gandhi and so on. So, I think possibly religious leaders were Now either they are out and out reaction like Baba Ramdev, or they are extremely cautious like Ramachandra, who will do nothing to disturb his property rights. He will not take a stand that could, he wants to just expand this kind of feel good, he's got a kind of niche in appealing to confused, young, rich people.
But he does intervene. I mean, he did go to Rajasthan for that tribal issue that was having with the Meena community. I think, there are attempts made by him and others who very selective interventions.
No, not really, because he talks too much. He goes abroad and claims he's brought peace to Kashmir. I've had this experience. He says he's working in Naxalite areas. I've been to Naxalite areas. So if he was to actually go there and run a school, for a long period of time, I'd say the only people who are doing some good work are still some Jesuits, who are often at odds with the Catholic Church for the kind of work they do. But I think religious leaders are either they become entrepreneurs, managers, and hence want to protect their assets and their properties, or they become outright reaction, that is reacting to the women's movement. They say, women must retreat in the home or go, like in Islam. There's been a real rise of reactionary movements in Islam. In Kashmir, for example, which had a very liberal, plural Islam, now Wahhabism is taking over. Women were extremely emancipated in Kashmir through the first half of the 20th century. And Sheikh Abdullah, for example, and Mrs. Abdullah did huge amounts of work in women's education. But now there's a boom in burqas in Kashmir. So across the board, among Christians, among Hindus, among Muslims, either they are becoming more conservative, or as I said, they're simply
protecting
corporate guys. They have a corporation and they try to protect their corporation.
So I'll just make it very direct and hard this time. I think the current discourse on the future leader of India is revolving entirely around Rahul Gandhi and Narendra Modi.
Yeah.
But I've heard you say that fortunately for us, we have better choices also.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask you, if you had to choose 3 alternatives for
I think that's a difficult thing. My view is that I don't want one great, heroic, redemptive figure in Delhi. I think we need 15 or 20 good chief ministers. Because we're going through a period of coalition politics. You can only do so much from Delhi. Of course, we need a prime minister who's more focused, more active, more capable than Manmohan Singh. But there's certainly some very good chief ministers. I think Nitish Kumar is one. Malik Sarkar of Tripura, who was re-elected 4 times, who's actually handled the insurgency quite well. So there are a few people who are good people in the different parties. The BJP, Congress is some good people. My hope really in some ways, my hope for Indian democracy in some ways is that the next time around, the next election, the Congress does so badly, they get 80 or 100 seats, that they kick out the family. And with that way, might find that a good leader comes from within the Congress party.
Why would you say Nitish Kumar is, what about the qualities and accomplishment personally do you find interesting that Nitish Kumar could?
Well, I think he worked in an extremely backward state. His achievements are that, of course, law and order situation improved enormously. As women, it was unsafe. You couldn't travel between districts because of the Gunda Raj. Then, of course, he's focused on education, health, and infrastructure. 3 things. He hasn't been able to attract entrepreneurship in, but I think his significance vis-a-vis, other people have said this, Modi's own critics in the BJP have said this, that Nitish Kumar or Shivraj Singh Chauhan in MP has been in a backward state in trying to modernize it. Modi is building on all the achievements of entrepreneurs and leaders of 150 years.
Already industrialized.
Yeah, already industrialized and advanced state. So, I said, Malik Sarkar of Tripura, you talk to people, his wife is a school teacher, he walks to work, he has solved the serious insurgency problem. There is absolutely no corruption. He's open to modern technology. It's a small state. It's a tiny state. But I think people speak highly of him. There are also others, even some of the BJP chief ministers. I've heard, this is second hand, but I'm told this Manohar Parrikar of Goa is someone who's not bad. So there are people, but whether they can become prime ministers is different. But I think, again, as I feel, too much of our attention is focused on one guy from Delhi who's going to fix everything. That's not going to happen.
So really what you're saying is stronger chief ministers, better leaders as chief ministers in the states are going to help the nation go further.
In the next 10 or 15 years, I think. Of course, you'll need a reasonably competent foreign minister to handle defense, foreign affairs and all that kind of visionary kind of stuff.
So then this is the federal imagination, actual federation.
And also you need stable two-party systems in the states. The states that have done best in terms of social indicators are Himachal Pradesh, Tamil Nadu and Kerala, and all have stable two-party systems, which are kind of alternating government. The states that have done worst are Bengal, where the same guys are in power for 30 years, or that kind of thing. So I think you need to think of stable two-party systems in the states, and of course capable leadership at that level.
And what about then, even if you take this problem down from the Prime Minister level to the Chief Minister level, there is this emergence of what people call authoritarianism.
Yes,
so there's the Jayalalitha thing, the way she administers, there's also Modi, he's perceived as authoritarian.
Yes.
So
Mayawati, that's absolutely.
What does that tell you about Indian society if you see that after all of this history, you said 5,000 years of that, 60 years young democracy, political experiment, what would you like to say that you are learning that in 2001 to 2013, this whole decade and forward, we're seeing Mamata emerge in this fashion. People expected one of her, and then she's sort of striking back at anybody who is...
No, absolutely. I think you're right. It's happened across the board that you have, either you have political parties around families or around states around individuals. So there's also Naveen Patnaik. And so there's Naveen Patnaik, Jayalalitha, even Nitish Kumar has an authoritarian streak, Modi, Pawan Changlang of Sikkim, Mayawati, Mamata Banerjee, and there is this sense that they don't have good... Mamata's ministers don't know whether they can meet her or not. It is said, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's said that when Jayalalitha has a cabinet meeting, only she sits and everyone else is standing. No, because you are allowed to sit in her presence. Ulicho Ramaswamy, the great Tamil writer, is allowed to sit in her presence, is what they say. Yes. Now, even if these stories are not entirely true, that they are told at all, tell you something about the image of this person. So that is worrying. Democracy is not about... there's a great speech in this book, Makers of Modern India, which was made by Ambedkar in the Constituent Assembly, which is about bhakti and hero worship, and how in a democracy you cannot lay down your liberties at the feet of a person, however great he is. However great, you cannot lay down your liberties at his feet. But this kind of thing is happening. There is certainly a surge in authoritarianism, of which Modi is only one, variant.
So I'll just step away a bit from the visible mainstream politics. What are your thoughts on the alternative movements that we are seeing? For example, we had the anti-corruption movement for a while, and even now we are seeing a push, although it's not very large, but we are seeing a push for a new kind of politics. We saw it in the Karnataka elections. We are most likely to see it in the upcoming Delhi elections. So what do you feel about the broad vision or the ideology in those movements?
And also leadership.
Obviously, it's born out of a despair with the mainstream political system, which seems to be extremely selfish, self-centered, shot through by corruption. My wife and I were talking this morning about the fact that no one talks about Robert Vadra anymore. They talked for 2 days and they forgot. But they used to go on and on till the chap had to, give up all his ill-gotten gains and all the. So this is the kind of thing that has given birth to these movements. But I think often these movements are swayed by the media attention they get. And I can give you a concrete example of this. It's to do with the anti-corruption movement. There was real public anger about corruption all over India. When Anna Hazare was on fast in Delhi, everywhere they were sympathetic fast, and the government was completely on the defensive. And it gave in and it said, okay, we will have a committee to discuss a Lokpal bill. 5 cabinet ministers and 5 unelected NGO workers. Now that's a colossal victory. That is absolute parity. Now you should have.
That itself is a pretty big deal.
But at that stage, they completely frittered it away by saying, it is going to telecast live. And if Kapil Sibal made a casual remark about Kejriwal go to a TV studio and abuse him back. But at that stage, if you wanted real change to take place, you have to suppress your ego, forget about the media and their TRPs, and sit in a closed room like this with your 5 guys on the other side and work out a kind of a reasonably workable Lokpal bill, which may have been a compromise, some give and take, but now they've got nothing at all. And it was a huge strategic mistake. And at that stage, I actually told Kejriwal this. And I know Kejriwal, I'm not in touch with him now because he's now very famous, but I actually called him. He had called Sibal some names. This was in 2011. I think July or August, or almost 2 years ago. I called him and I said, don't go to the, if Sibal says something, don't go to the next guy who says, Sibal ne aapke baare mein ye kaha, aapki kya raay hai? Forget about it. Just sit and hammer out a bill. I checked, where else would you get this kind of parity? 5 cabinet ministers and 5 unelected guys like you.
And all heavyweights.
Huh?
All of them were heavyweight ministers.
Yeah, absolutely. There was, the finance minister, the law minister, and the home. I mean, it's like a major thing. And I think that's very badly advised. And they fell into the trap of the media. You see, the media is very good at highlighting a problem. It is disastrous at solving it. Yeah, and Gandhi recognized this. Gandhi would know when to start a movement or when to call it off.